Welcome to the Short Funk Podcast. I'm Tom Barbalet. Today I want to talk about a particular aspect of 1996 associated with the Noble Ape development, or as it was called, the Nervana project. The Nervana project was launched on June 13th, 1996 in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. It was launched in Kuala Lumpur primarily because it was just an ideal opportunity for me to launch the project. It was also an opportune date because 4 years before, to the day, a good friend of mine had disappeared, and I wanted to create a dual memorial, or at least a dual starting date, one associated with my friend's disappearance, and also one associated with this new project that I was developing called Nervana. The ideas had percolated for many months prior to the launch of the Nervana project. It was launched after a few different elements. I mean, one of the heavy influences was a fellow called Peter Wojciechowski, who had said that I should put all my ideas together into one thing because I had a lot of software scattered over various areas. I had antiviral software, some simulation software, some game software, some compiler software, some language analysis software, just all different bits and pieces of software. And Peter Wojciechowski said to me, "You've got to bring this together into one thing, which ideally would be classified as a virtual reality project," because at the time, virtual reality was relatively hot, and the idea of having a simulated environment to a really high resolution was something that I think a lot of people could get behind. I used the term infinite virtual reality to describe the early developments with the Nervana project, primarily because you could zoom in from, a planet away to nearly a grain of sand based on the way the simulation was written. High resolution was very important to me, although aspects of the simulation had to be restrained because at the time I was writing it on a 68,000 processor. You could only multiply bytes together on the 68,000 processor. Its kind of normative operating range was in 16 bits, and the simulation had to be written to deal with this relatively restrictive processing architecture. When I came to rewrite Noble Ape again in about 2000, I started addressing these mathematical problems, but we'll talk a little bit about that in a later Short Funk recording. In 1996, after launching the Nervana project, I returned to Canberra, Australia, and pretty soon after returning, I was hit with a bout of mono, or what is called in Australia glandular fever. And through this period of time, I really couldn't move. I had some savings because I'd been working at a physical sciences and engineering research centre at the Australian National University, so that had been my job for probably 3 years by the time Nervana was launched. And through this period of time, I'd saved quite a bit of money, but when I came down with mono, unfortunately, it just ate away my savings because I couldn't really move. I had to order food into the dormitory, and thankfully, most of the food would be delivered to my door. So I was able to survive on takeaway food over long periods of time. Unfortunately, you have to have a particular diet when you have this particular disease as well. It's all kind of very boring. And the effect that it had on my savings, and also the kind of bleak sense of no one coming and visiting me. My girlfriend visited periodically. My father, who also lived in the city that I lived in, very occasionally visited, but most of the time I spent in my dorm room just writing the original manuals of Noble Ape, or as they were, the original manuals of the Nervana project, and sleeping. I was up only between 4 and 6 hours a day, usually around 4, and I was in a kind of groggy, almost flu-delirious state through this period of time. But I realized what Peter Wojciechowski had said to me was that really I had to focus my energy so I would get some degree of differential importance. I needed to distinguish myself from all the other folks around me in order to escape from the circumstance which laid itself out through this mono-induced fever haze as just being a hopeless situation where I would probably, die alone in Australia if I didn't focus my efforts on this Noble Ape thing. And through this kind of energy, I generated the original manuals, which were very critical in order to get a grant, but I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next recording. Tom Barbalet in San Jose, signing out.